joined the Navy in 1992 and spent 8 years as an enlisted SEAL. He attended Old Dominion University, graduating Summa Cum Laude in May of 2004, completing his time with the Hampton Roads Naval ROTC as Student Battalion Commanding Officer before he was commissioned as a Navy SEAL Officer. Over the next 4 years, he completed combat deployments in both Afghanistan and Iraq. In 2007, outside of Fallujah, Iraq, Lieutenant Redman's assault team came under heavy machine gun fire and small arms fire, and he was severely wounded. While recovering at Bethesda Naval Medical Center, Jason authored and hung a bright orange sign on his door, which became a statement and symbol for wounded warriors everywhere. Lieutenant Redman is the recipient of numerous personal awards, including the Bronze Star Medal with V for Valor, the Purple Heart, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, 2 Combat Action ribbons, and the U.S. Army Ranger Tab, to name a few. Jason retired from the Navy in 2013 and founded the Combat Wounded Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization which inspires combat wounded warriors to overcome. He currently acts as the executive director of the organization. He is also the founder and CEO of SOF, Spoken, a speaking company, and just this year he founded the Overcome Academy, a leadership program for wounded warriors to develop the next greatest generation. We are proud to call Jason a member of the Monarch family, and it is an honor to have him as part of today's program. Please welcome back Jason Redman.
I tell you, it's an absolute honor to be back here. President Broderick and all our distinguished guests. You know, it brings back a lot of memories. The last time I actually stood on these stairs here at Kaufman Mall was 17 years ago when we ran an event called the Run for Freedom. And we ran the American flag 1 mile around campus. We had a tent set up at the end of Kaufman Mall. 1 mile for every service member that had been killed at that time. And that was in April of 2004. And at that time it was, if I remember correctly, it was about 740. And it is amazing now, we had over 7,000 that we have lost in this war. So I can't think of a more fitting opportunity than on this 100th anniversary of Veterans Day to be back here at my alma mater talking about what it is to be a veteran. The first thing I want to do, I want to thank anyone here that has served. You have sacrificed for this amazing nation that we live in to give myself and my family the freedom that we have here in America. My son is actually a student here today, which is pretty mind-blowing, to be perfectly honest. As I thought about what I was going to say, I saw a speech given several years ago by Colonel Oliver North. It was this amazing speech on Veterans Day honoring the tenacity of American warriors. And he surmised it with this phrase, "We're Americans. It's what we do." Since I was grievously wounded and given a second chance at life, I have dedicated my new life to honoring the sacrifice that built this great nation. And I personally feel that that phrase that Colonel North spoke of does an amazing job capturing the essence of what it means to be an American. So as I crafted this speech, I quickly realized in order for me to speak about such lofty rhetoric, I have to take us back to the beginning of our great nation's history to capture what it truly means to utter those fortunate words. And so, our journey begins. An unknown warrior stood nervously in the bow of the small boat with his fellow Continental Army soldiers. He surveyed the open river and the dark bank in front of him, and he thought of how he had come to find himself at this moment. He thought of the difficult journey he had made 15 years ago from London to start a new life and hope for a better future. He thought of the land he had toiled on for the last 12 years and his 4 sons and 2 daughters he had raised. And he thought of the increasing taxes on his crops, which were creating more and more hardship for his family. He shuddered on this bitterly cold Christmas day as he looked upon their leader next to him. A cold breeze blew across the icy waters as General Washington gave the order to move out. Our nameless warrior scanned the dark side of the New Jersey shore, and he thought of the vicious Hessian warriors they hoped to catch in a surprise attack. He gave one last thought of his family, and he knew the moment was here. The moment was now. The future for his sons and daughters rested in this moment. He knew the gravity of the situation was captured in the password of the day: victory or death. 168 years into the future, a nameless warrior stood on the bow of his landing craft. The spray from the German artillery landing around him rocked the craft, and he shuddered as the ramp began to lower. The pinging of the rounds clattered off the metal hull, and he heard men cry out in pain around him as bullets began to bite flesh. Stench of war and gunpowder filled his nose, and he willed himself to make that step forward off the ramp into the rolling seas in front of him. The water was red and littered with the bodies of fellow warriors as he pushed forward onto the beaches. He looked across the beaches of Normandy, besieged by German forces. He thought of his family and the Nazi atrocities, and he knew the moment was here. The moment was now. The future for his sons and daughters was at hand, and he rushed forward into battle. 62 years later, on a star-rich Iraqi night, a nameless warrior checked his weapon one last time as the helicopter he was on set down for a high-value direct action mission. His heart thundered in his chest as he moved through the compound. He momentarily thought of his family and brothers lost in this grueling long war. He thought of that fateful day 6 years earlier when the towers fell, fueled by hate and driven by twisted beliefs. Reality quickly snapped him back as gunfire erupted around him. But he did not hesitate. He did not pause. He continued moving through the compound as the explosive breach rocked the still of the night. He entered the breach point and headed deeper into the large house. As he moved to the final door, he took one last glance over his shoulder, confirming his teammates were behind him. He leveled his gun on the doorway and he thought to himself, the moment is here. The moment is now. His heart raced and his mindset turned away. But he knew the future of America was at stake. He stilled his racing mind and he kicked in the door to the room, making entry into the unknown, momentarily wondering if this would be the last door he ever stepped through. Now I know what this nameless warrior felt, because this nameless warrior has a name. And at that time, 11 years ago, his name was Navy SEAL Lieutenant Jason Redman. All these warriors, including myself, share a bond carried by all American warriors, carried by many of you, our veterans and those who aspire into the greatness of the American warrior community. American warriors have fought for our independence. We have fought against brutal dictators, Nazism, communism, and now terrorism. Many people ask me, why does America go all over the world, rushing to the aid of so many troubled countries? But they fail to grasp what it truly means to be a citizen of this great nation, to enjoy freedom and opportunity, to be able to vote, and to share this gift as an ambassador of freedom. And you see, all of that is summarized amazingly in Colonel North's speech about a young Navy medic who, in the middle of a fierce firefight, rushed back and forth through enemy fire to bring back wounded Marines. At one point, he was making a return trip, and the two men he carried were not American Marines, but wounded Iraqi soldiers. Reuters reporters were filming the firefight, and they called out to this young Navy corpsman, and they said, "Hey, Yank, don't you realize those aren't Marines?" As if to say, "Hey, stupid, what are you doing risking your life for them?" The young corpsman glanced over at the astonished reporters, never missing a beat, and said, "We're Americans. It's what we do." Today, as we get ready to celebrate this 100th anniversary of Veterans Day, take a few moments to hug your family a little closer. Take a deep breath and breathe in the air of freedom. And take a moment to recognize both of those things would not be possible without the warriors of America's past, present, and future. Because you see, for over 242 years, America's brave sons and daughters have gone forward to preserve and uphold the freedoms this country was built upon. Courageous Men and women have lined up to go forth into harm's way and fight for the freedom and sovereignty of our great nation, to ensure the opportunity for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is afforded to every American citizen. They came from all walks of life, all races, religions, and colors, but unified and driven by the belief in liberty for all. Let Veterans Day be a reminder, all who are gathered here, of the true cost of freedom. And let all of you recognize that this country that we live in, it did not happen by chance. Hard work, tenacity, tremendous sacrifice made it into what it is today. Men and women who dedicated their lives to the warrior cause and embody the greatness that resides in every American, that is rarely acted upon and even less rarely ever seen. Because at the highest level, every man and woman who has ever fought for freedom recognized one simple fact. Freedom is not a right. It must be fostered, nurtured, preserved, and in the darkest times, it must be fought for. American warriors recognize that freedom is a gift. They know it is worth fighting for and even falling for, even if others out there may take it for granted. They know that the fight for freedom provides others with the true hope of opportunity, a glimmer of freedom that shines through the darkest night, a spotlight that burns out of the deepest hell. And it is in those moments, like a radiant sunrise bursting the horizon, you see the greatness in man. And it validates that the sacrifices of my warrior brothers, of America's sons and daughters, that the scars that I and thousands more carry are worth it. They're worth it for my children and your children and our children's children. And despite the pain that comes with war, we recognize it is to preserve the best America has yet to offer. This is the true cost of freedom and the eternal vision of America. And these men and women who have fought the wars of America's past, who have fought for our very freedom against evil and tyranny, men and women who are amongst you in this audience today, hold the keys to America's future and her finest hour yet to come. And though the winds of terrorism will continue to blow and future wars will be waged, I know there will be brave men and women who will brace against it, steadfast, resolute, courageous, because we're Americans. It's what we do. God bless our American military forces and their families, both past and present. God bless Old Dominion University and the students who will go out there and become the future leaders of this great nation. And God bless the future of America. Thank you.